Stereo collectors. Decide pop in and say hi with my smiling face today and some coffee. Today we're looking at a really rare early solid state made by Nippon Sound, which later became Alps and Luxman. Kind of an interesting unit, and this is the kind of find I like. At a flea market in a gravel parking lot, sitting on a barrel is this thing. It has a wood sleeve, and the wood sleeve had water stains on it, and I look at $10. That's the right price. And I thought, I'm not even going to chew them down. It's worth $10. And it's really nicely made. Like solid aluminum faceplate, aluminum knobs, like machined aluminum, a little bit of wearing on some of the script. What's interesting is the circuitry in these. You can see it's kind of half point to point, half circuit boards. These are phenolic resin circuit boards, which are very fragile. And some of the areas here, they had put new diodes. Somebody had changed the diodes in the power supply, and it's actually a dual power supply unit. I replaced those because they were oxidized. I don't know if you've ever seen this. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. But certain components, the leads oxidize, and then they go faulty. A few of these big caps. But I plugged the unit in, no variac, nothing like that. Put a source into it, and got sound of the headphone jacks. I'm thinking, when was this thing last turned on? 1975? And anyway, it's kind of an interesting build. Let's come around to the front again. Nice heat sinks on the back. These are germanium PNP transistors. They're Sanyo transistors, originals. And this uses a phase splitter transformer to drive the outputs from a single transistor here, rather than using a direct type of approach. And that places it usually between 62 and 67, somewhere in that range. Interesting Alps components all through the thing. Anyway, you can see I've done some replacements here. A 2200 here. Very interesting split power supply. Get this. Outputs are, like I say, germanium. Okay, that's a positive ground chassis. Signal transistors in the phono stage and in the tone control stage are germanium. So there's a power supply section for the outputs, another one for here, rail that splits off for here, and get this, another winding on the transformer just for the NPN silicon pre-drivers. And these are actually NPN silicon here as well. They actually built it that way, it wasn't necessarily for the sound. It was because at that time, PNP and NPN devices, it was hard to make an NPN with a lot of current handling. So that's why they stuck with the outputs. But they did have good characteristics as a pre-driver. And the long and the short of it is, you end up with an amp with a very warm tube-like sound. I've listened to some sources just with headphones on this, and I'm like, this thing sounds great, like smooth highs, tight bass. So I've been working on the electrolytics. Interesting enough, the electrolytics on this are over 50 years old. Most of them test okay, but not great. One thing I noticed with these sun filters here, they're actually still working, but there's quite a bit of internal resistance. This one was getting warm, and it was dropping the split rail power supply for the outputs from 28 volts a rail down to about 24.6, just because of internal resistance. That's fine, you can listen to it that way, but it hurts your final output. And then looking at the bottom again, what can I say? I did, instead of stuffing these cans, I actually put two terminal boards here. And on some, I will stuff the cans. And I can tell you one thing, from being in this business a long time, when I started out, these were coming in the 1980s. Units like this would come into the stereo shop with the Elna or the Sun caps, or the same cap, and the senior techs would say, be careful, if there any oil coming from those, that's PCB laden oil. That's very toxic. And I'd be like, oh, okay, well, what do we do? Just don't touch it, clean it up with some Q-tips and alcohol, replace the cap. In a lot of cases, many of these were thrown out because it would take quite a bit to get them going. And the components that were available at that time, the store always had kind of a push to sell somebody something new. If it was going to be a lot of work to restore something, they'd try to sell them something new. And then we get all kinds of units like this that are just dumped off at the service department, and the guys would fix them on their own time because we're told just to throw them out. Sell them to 40 or 50 bucks to a friend. Anyway, that's why I've done this. These original caps, I would be very leery of them, because what I was told 40 some years ago is true. Those caps do have a PCB laden oil, which a little bit of exposure is probably not a big deal. Who am I to know? All I know is I don't hollow them out to restuff them. Don't want to touch that stuff. I've done some vintage radios that have caps from the 30s and 40s, and those, a lot of them, it's like, well, okay, I'll hollow them out. They may have the same oil, but in almost every case, they're so dried out that whatever's in there, you take the seal off, pull the little disc with the terminals off, and whatever's in there is gone to powder. You just scrape it out and you can work with that, but it's a different thing. Anyway, we'll see how this sounds, how it works. The neat thing about germanium transistors, and this is why people love them in fuzz pedals, they have a certain distortion that's very tube-like. So it's kind of going to be interesting what this sounds like when it's hooked up to a set of monitor speakers. Anyway, keep smiling. Have a good day.